Everything was perfect.
Honestly, this week has been pretty good.
Wow, amazing. I love how
Yeah.
I wait for that week when everything's perfect, and then we wait for that week to showcase the pain and suffering lesson in Jewish philosophy. Okay, great. Well, let's go back to Akiva. He didn't have enough CTeenU. That's a bad thing for him, right? So today we're going to look at bad, and we're going to look through a few prisms to see, is it bad or is it not? And what do we do with that bad when we see it? Okay. So let's go to slide 1. So there is this common conflict that we just introduced, that God is good and yet he lets bad things happen, is not a dilemma that is new. Okay, it's been around since day 1. And actually, the first people to bring this up were not wicked, horrible people that like to complain. They were actually some of the greatest people in history. I'm going to shout out a few names to you, okay? Abraham, King David, Miriam. Anyone else has any great Jewish leaders that you can remember from Hebrew school? Any great Jewish heroes? Bryce, you're on mute. Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Are we missing someone? Someone who gave us the Torah? Moses. Moses. Look at these pictures over here. Look at these pictures. This picture over here. We have in the middle, we have a sea being split. That reminds you of which great Jewish leader, guys? Akiva, you're glitchy. Maybe you want to go out and come back in. Which great leader does that remind you of? Moses. Ethan, what great Jewish leader does that remind you of? Right over here, this picture. There's an altar. There's a guy standing next to it. There's someone on the altar.
Abraham.
Abraham. Okay, awesome. And what about here? Hello, Yossi. What about here? What does that great Jewish leader remind you of? Bryce. Bryce is frozen. Akiva, you're back on. What great Jewish leader does that remind you of?
Moshe.
That is Moshe in the middle. But then we have someone over here. Who's that?
Playing the harp?
Who's playing the harp?
Who is the one who was big with music? Yosef? I don't know.
King David. Okay, there's
thing
all in common that all of these 3 great Jewish leaders share. What is that? Based on what we're saying here about the conflict between a good God that does bad things that look like that, what is one thing that they all shared in their relationship with God and the nation of Israel?
They all asked him why bad things were done to them.
Boom! Let's get a mind blown going over here. We haven't done that in a while. Mind blown, everyone. Thank you, Akiva. Mind blown. Yes, Dominique, just like that. Just like that. They all complained. Does it strike you as strange that the greatest Jewish leaders of all time are known partly for their ability to complain? Would you like to have that on your tombstone after 120? A great complainer, bar none. I don't think so. Not me. So why are they known for complaining? What is in that? Let's go to source 1. Now, Dominique and Chloe and you guys won't have the book, but that's okay. You'll just listen to the text as it's being read. Yossi, welcome. Can you read for us source 1, Moses challenges God? Go for it.
What page is it? I don't know what page we're on. Sorry.
We're on lesson 4, the first source, in page 63.
Okay.
Source 1.
Yeah. Then Moses returned to the Lord and said, "O Lord, why did you bring harm upon this nation? Why did you send me? Ever since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has dealt worse with this nation, and still you have not delivered your people."
Wow. Moses. When you look at that statement, okay, if you didn't see the word Moses there, okay, what would you look at that guy and say? Would you say he's a big believer, an atheist, somewhere in between? Where would you put him on the ranking scale? 100 being the biggest believer, 0 being an atheist. Where would you put this person? Let's take out the word Moses. Where would you put him, guys? Dominique, where would you put this person right here talking to God? Ethan, where would you put this this statement from Moses?
I'd say he would have to be a pretty strong believer because in order for because obviously he thinks that God exists, he believes in God, but he also believes that God has influence in the actions because he's asking why he let this happen. So
So Ethan said it right out. Didn't give you guys a chance to get there, but exactly the point. To complain means that you agree with the basis, which is that there is someone there that can do the right thing and could and does do the right thing, but doesn't do the right thing. If you didn't believe that, then there would be no cause for complaining. Beautiful, Ethan. Excellent. So Moses complains all day long. And now let's turn to source 2, another famous person in history who a whole book details his struggles and his troubles that he had, and he talks to God and says, why? And that person was Job, or in Hebrew, it's Eov, okay? Source 2, we look at this, look at Job, and we look at this conversation that he has with God. Let's see what he says. Akiva, can you read source 2, please?
Yes, just give me 1 second.
As we are running quick on time, so we're going to have to go to someone. Bryce, source 2, please. And we'll get back to you, Akiva, because we only have half an hour left until a guest feature speaker comes on. Bryce, go for it.
What page is it, Rebbe?
Guys, we gotta be on the ball. Page 64.
I will say to God, do not condemn me. Let me know why you quarrel with me. Is it good to you that you should oppress, that you should reject the toil of your hands?
Okay, let's try at the end. But thank you very much. And shine upon the counsel of the wicked. So God, Job turns up to God and complains. He says, why must good people suffer? And why do bad people get all the riches? It doesn't seem to make sense. And, you know, if you look back in history, you'd see why a lot of Jewish people are lawyers today, because Job, Moses, King David, these guys were pretty good lawyers in the way they spoke to God. So let's look at this picture over here. Okay, let's look at this picture. Whoops, went too far. Here's the caption. It's coming from the mom, and she's saying, "What's wrong with you? Can't you remember your table manners?" Who can tell me what's wrong with this picture? This mom is talking to a 1-year-old daughter, and she says, "What's wrong with you? Can't you remember table manners? Hello? What's wrong?"
He has nothing to remember. He's a baby.
Exactly. He's a baby, right? So the key word here is expectations. When you have expectations, you end up trusting that those expectations will be met. The more we trust, the more we expect, the more we expect. The more we expect, the more we trust. They go hand in hand. So a little baby, you don't have very low expectations, so you trust that they're gonna do this. But for an older person, you have high expectations, so therefore you can ask. So many people have asked me this before, and we're gonna go right to the root of this: the Holocaust. The Holocaust, terrible thing, and many people can come away from it and say that maybe there's no God, and how could there be a God after such a thing? And people have asked all this, but perhaps the greatest spokesman to speak on behalf of the 6 million people that went through such hell would be Elie Wiesel, who wrote countless books about his accounts. and a famous philosopher who delved right into this itself. And let's see what Elie Wiesel has to say. In source 3, I'm going to ask Akiva back to you. If you could read source 3.
Okay. Elie Wiesel, a Romanian-born Jewish writer who wrote about the destruction of European Jewry during World War II, penned this letter to God. Master of the universe, in my testimony, I have written harsh words, burning words about your role in our tragedy. I would not repeat them today, but I felt them then. I felt them in every cell of my being. Why did you allow, if not enable, the killer, day after day, night after night, to torment, kill, and annihilate tens of thousands of Jewish children? Why were they abandoned by your creation? These thoughts were in no way destined to diminish the guilt of the guilty. Their established culpability is irrelevant to my problem with you, Master of the universe. In my childhood, I did not expect much from human beings, but I expected everything from you. Elie Wiesel.
Wow. Akiva, you read so well. And now I come to you guys. I want everyone to weigh in on this. Look at that last sentence. But I expected everything from you. What is he saying there? I expected everything from you, God. What is he saying there? Ethan, help us out.
He created everything.
Okay, created everything, and therefore,
God, he's saying that God, like human beings were made by God and they weren't made perfectly and they were made to have flaws, but God is a perfect being who like created them, so he would expect everything from them.
wow, beautifully said, Ethan. Does anyone else want to share anything about that? Chloe, Dominique, Bryce? Yossi, don't you feel shy, don't worry. Yossi is usually our top contributor, but not today.
Not
Yeah, I
feeling
know. I
great
haven't
today.
heard a single Yossi joke or a.
It's crazy. And he doesn't even have his Benny Schmelnick background. Something is
Are
going
you
on, guys.
serious? No, Rebbe, you're kidding. Wait,
It's a true story.
what?
What's going on, Yossi?
Yossi, what happened?
I'm not feeling great.
Let's sing a rousing refuah shlema for Yossi. Refuah shlema.
Refuah shlema.
Get well quick. So, yes, Dominique, do you have something to say? Nothing? Okay, no worries. But beautifully said, Ethan. Thank you very much. God is perfect, and God is everything. And therefore, imagine this, Elie Wiesel, by his own admission, is saying that God is perfect. And therefore, how could he let something happen? If God wasn't perfect, you would never be able to pose the question, why? The question would not exist. There'd be no foundation to say, why did he do this? I just can't hold myself back. I don't have the powers. I can't control these crazy people. But no, God, you're perfect. You could. And therefore, how did you let it happen? And we see that in the next text, again, written by another amazing leader in the Jewish people, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he says like this, we can read it on the screen. You know what? Actually, we can have Chloe. You can read it for us. Chloe, you want to share with us what you see on the screen? Go for it. Microphone not working. Let's go to Henriette. Yossi, your turn. Yossi, can you, after you're feeling all better,
I just read.
Oh, you just read? Oh, yes. You just, no, you didn't. Akiva read that.
No, I read right before Kiva.
Okay, fine. Ethan, let's go to you. Ethan, go for it.
Okay. Our outrage, our incessant challenge to God over what has occurred, this itself is a most powerful attestation to our belief in him, in our faith in his goodness. Because if we did not, underneath it all, possess this faith, what is it that we had outraged at? The blind workings of fate, the random arrangement of quarks that make up the universe, it is only because we believe in God, because we are convinced that there is right and there is wrong, and that right must and ultimately will triumph, that we cry out as Moses did, "Why, my God, have you done evil to your people?"
Amazing. Thank you, Ethan. So we go back to our original question. The person that complains and says, why, God, did he do this? Why did he do that? Complains. Where is he on the scale now? 100 being the biggest believer and 0 being the biggest atheist. Where is he now, guys? Where do you put him? The guy that complains and says, why, God? Bryce, where are you putting this guy? The guy that complains versus
The very top.
Very top. Because the only reason why he's complaining is because he has such a strong belief in God, that God is perfect and God is the good. And therefore he says, it doesn't make any sense. How could you let such a thing happen? Because you're able to stop it from happening. Okay, so we got past the first point. It's not an atheist view to say why. It's the biggest belief in God to say why. Let's go to point B. Everything is for the good. And we're going to peel away layer after layer. So the first layer we're going to peel away is that we're going to look at scenarios in life that aren't the doomsday scenarios. Things that happen that are bad, they end up turning good. You know, we break a leg, we hurt ourselves, our friend insults us, we fail a test, something bad. Okay?
Hashkafa pratis, Rebbe?
That's all part of it. Beautiful, Akiva. So we are going to find what our great Jewish leaders had in them to be able to face these challenges head on. What did they know that we don't? So I'm going to tell you a scenario. If you have a pen and paper, then you can go ahead and you can draw it on your pen and paper. But I'm going to ask one person that can annotate on the whiteboard. So I'm going to share the whiteboard. And who would like to annotate? Yossi, would you like to annotate? Yeah?
Sure. What do you
Go
want
ahead.
me
On
to
the
do?
whiteboard, I'm going to tell you a scenario, and I want you to just draw what I'm telling you, okay? Ready? Okay, Yossi, here you go. The rest of you can draw it on papers and then show me on the screen what you just drew. Just get a pen and paper and draw what I'm telling you, okay? Okay. You enter a room that smells really badly. There is this chemical stench in this room. It smells of chemical. You walk inside and there's a pale white woman lying unconscious on a bed. Yossi, are you annotating? I don't see
I'm
that.
confused. You want me to draw all that?
Yeah. Just draw
We're
what.
supposed to draw this?
Yeah, draw this.
What?
Go ahead. You enter a room. You're gonna draw the room, okay? You enter a room. It smells of chemicals, okay? And there is a pale white woman lying on a bed, lying unconscious, okay? Bending over this woman, there is a person. I'm gonna call him Mr. X. He has a mask on his face, covering his whole face besides his eyes. And in his hand, he's holding a sharp knife. What, Yossi, tell me, what are you imagining this scene is describing?
I'm torn between an attempted murder or a surgeon.
Bryce, what do
I
you
think
draw?
I got it with surgeon though.
You got it.
Attempted murder or certain, but yeah.
Yes, you guys are good. That's exactly what point B is going to tell us, okay? Mr. X could either be a murderer and about to kill someone, or he could be a surgeon about to save someone's life. Let me see what you drew, Bryce. Wow, what a lovely crime scene. Beautiful, Akiva. What is that? Is that a murder scene? What is that? Like a
I
torpedo?
don't know. It's a woman. It's a guy walking in the door, and then a dude leaning over a lady on a bed.
Okay, sounds exciting. We'll get you to run the next TV show after Grey's Anatomy goes out again. So it's
I think it's actually
What?
Yeah.
What do you say?
I think it's actually a movie where they're trying to take the bullet out.
Oh.
It's like a action movie.
CTeenU University presents the action movie. So now that I tell you that it was a surgeon, or like Yossi correctly pointed out, it could be a surgeon. Now, all of a sudden, we look at the whole scene differently. Before, you may be looking at the scene like, oh my gosh, this is scary, and that's a shiver. Now, wow, it's a hospital. Someone's life is being saved. This is incredible. Wow, what a beautiful scene. So this is the perfect analogy for human suffering, for how we can look at human suffering and look at it in a different way, okay? Because here is our surgeon. When you look, sorry, that wasn't so bad. When you look at a scene, you could look at it in two ways. You could look at it with your positive lens or your negative lens. Sometimes, however, we are not given that positive lens until after. It's a retroactive lens, a lens that only happens, that only get that foresight after a few years or maybe a few decades. Let's look at source 4. I present to you Nachum Ish Gamzu. The Nachum, the man who would always say Gamzu Latova. And we welcome Rabbi Yudi Dukes, our special feature entertainer tonight, who will be driving home this message. Yudi, we have just a few more pages. We're going to go quick so we can get to you, okay?
Not a problem. I will enjoy listening to you as well.
Thank you, Yudi. So let's read Nachum Ish Gamzu. Bryce, go for it. Can you read the text from Tainus? The Gemara, the Talmud presents a very interesting story of Nachum, who would always say Gamzu. Let's find out why it's called Nachum Ish Gamzu. Go for it, Bryce.
So source number 4?
Source number 4.
Okay. And why did they call him Namav Gamzu? The reason is that with regard to any matter that occurred to him, he would say, this too is for the good. Gamzu Latova. And a gift to the house of the emperor. They said, and present this gift. Let Nam of Gamzu go, as he is accustomed to miracles. They sent with him a chest full of jewels and pearls, and he went and spent the night in a certain inn. During the night, these residents of the inn rose and took all of the precious jewels and pearls from the chest, and filled it with earth. The next day, when he saw what had happened, Nam of Gamzu said, this too is for the good.
So if you follow the story, it doesn't sound like it's for the good because he doesn't have any jewels anymore. And what happens is he actually goes to the emperor, presents these jewels, think the jewels. He doesn't open the chest. He opens the chest. The emperor sees it's dirt. He gets so mad. He's about to put him in jail and send him away when a guard who is actually Elijah the prophet, disguised, says, well, why don't we try these dirt out? It could be their weapons, because that's what happened to Abraham many years ago. They tried out, sure enough, this dirt, this sand, turns into weapons. And the king is amazed, and he sends Nachum home with tons of riches. And we see from this story that Nachum had the foresight, the belief. He had a high level of belief that he was able to look at something that seemed like it was bad and know that, no, this is too good. He was able to look at the scenario that was bad and say, no, this is actually good. Source 5, we won't read it outside. It's a similar story from Nachum's student, Rabbi Akiva. Now, Rabbi Akiva also had a similar incident when everything went bad. His rooster died, and his donkey and camel and his candle. He was traveling, and he was left in the dark, and in the middle of the night, robbers came, stole everything from the townspeople, but didn't steal anything from him because he was in the dark and they didn't hear it. And he said the same thing. He said, called Avid Rahman al-Tav Avid, everything Hashem does is for the good. Now, this is a little different than Nachum, because Nachum, he said, no, this itself is good. Even the bad, it might look bad, but it itself is good. Whereas Rabbi Akiva was saying, no, it's for the good. It may be bad, but the end purpose is that it's going to become good. But regardless, the point is the same, that we are given the ability to sometimes rise above our struggles and look at it through a different lens and say, no, this too will end up being good. And it's just like the story of Joseph, right? It starts off terrible, but it could only happen that way so that Joseph would become the viceroy of Egypt and provide for his family. Let's go to point C, though. Let's go a little deeper, because now we get to things that we proved that sometimes even bad things could lead to good things, or maybe even good themselves. But now we're going to say, point C, that can't actually be true, because God is a good God. He is good. And therefore, everything he does is good. So it's impossible for God to do something bad. Even if it's going to turn into good, it has to be itself good, right? Everything, if he's a good God, then everything he does should be good. So now we're going to go a little deeper. I'm going to play something for you guys. Ready? Does everyone hear that? It's annoying, right? Yeah? Okay.
What
Does everyone hear that still?
hearing? What am I supposed to be hearing?
Do you hear this high-pitched sound? You don't hear a high-pitched sound? Oh my gosh, it doesn't work over Zoom.
Now I do. Now I do.
Oh, you do?
It's very faint though.
Do you hear it now? Do you hear that?
Rebbe, you can share sound.
No, it's from my phone.
Oh.
Okay, anyways, it's called a tormentor app. It's basically, it sends a high frequency. And the younger you are, the higher frequency you can hear, because the air is still being destroyed that badly by all the air pollution. And if you're like under the age of 20, for example, you could hear a frequency of so high. The older you go, the less frequency you could hear. The same thing is with a black light. What is a black light? A black light is an extra strong light that shines extra strongly, and because of that, we can't see it with our own eyes. Its wavelengths are much shorter, and therefore we can't see it, or like a UV light. These are lights that are extra strong, and because of that, our eyes cannot see it. So that is what we are going to say in point C, that there are certain things that are so good, just like this frequency or the light. They're so good, they're so strong, that they look like bad things to us. When we see them, we fail to see the good because it's so good. Sort of like when you take sugar and you put too much of it in, it becomes bitter. Well, not really sugar, but like stevia and certain things. Too much of something sweet can sometimes make it not taste good. So source 6, it says, Akiva, read for us source 6.
Oh, sorry, I didn't unmute. Source 6. Brachos. Just as one recites a blessing for his good fortune, blessed are you, God, who is good and does good, so must he recite a blessing for misfortune, as it says, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Deuteronomy 6:5. With all your heart, with your two impulses, the evil impulse as well as the good impulse.
Okay, so wait, hold up. Who can help me out over here? How is it possible to thank God for the good and thank God for the bad? And why would we even do that? Can someone help me out over here?
Because the bad is only there for the good. Just like we were just talking about, he only does bad things so that in the end it ends up good.
So let's thank God when it comes good, eventually. But right now it's bad. So why am I thanking God right now?
Because if he didn't make the bad, then there wouldn't be the good.
Okay, so we'll thank God once the good thing happens. But when the bad thing happens, at that moment, it's bad. Why am I thanking God right there? Yossi, can you shed some light on us? Some extra strong UV light?
I don't know.
We'll take a
I mean,
pause. Feeling wrong.
I'm thinking.
You're thinking.
Huh.
Panina, you've been awfully quiet. Help us out of here. Sounds like everyone's mic's not working today. So we're left with the question, how can you thank God at the moment that it is bad, just like you're thanking God when it's good? Let's look at source 7. The Gemara explains that this does not mean that he recites the blessing, the same blessing that we would recite when something terrible happens, like when someone passed away. Rather, what we're saying is that you should accept the bad with joy, just like you're accepting the good with joy. Because just like with the good, it's visible to the naked eye that this is good, so too with the bad, it actually stems from a hidden world, where in that world, everything is good. And in that world, it is really good. Meaning, some things are so good, but we're not mature enough to see yet because we're not trained to the eye. Just like if you bought a kid a $50,000 gift certificate to a store, he'd look at the paper and he'd start coloring on it and use it as scrap paper. But if you bought him a toy truck, he'd be so excited. Why the difference? A toy truck is worth $50, it's $50,000 because he's not mature enough to see it. We are not mature enough to see this excellent extreme light. It's too great for us, and therefore it's like it's hidden from our eyes. And the Alter Rebbe in Tanya says this point beautifully in source 8. Yossi, can you read that for us? Source 8.
Yeah. It says, the truth is, however, that nothing bad falls from above and everything is good, though it is not apprehended because of its immense and abundant goodness.
Wow. And there's a story about this. A man once came to the great rabbi, the Mitzvah Rebbe, Chabad, and he asked him, he said, how is it possible that I can accept even the bad stuff with joy? I don't understand this. Your father, the Alter Rebbe, wrote the Tanya, and he said that quote that we just read that said, accept everything with joy. How is that possible? So the Alter Rebbe said, go visit my student. The Mitzvah Rebbe said, go visit my student. And he will tell you, he will explain exactly how it's possible for you to accept it with joy. I'm sorry, this wasn't the mitzvah, this is the Magid on this search. So he went to his student's name was Reb Zusha of Anipoli, and he goes and travels to his house. He gets to his house, and it's a ramshackle house, broken down. There's benches all over the place. There's hay they use as chairs. There's barely any food on the tables. It's a terrible scene. And he sees Reb Zusha is so excited. He's so ecstatic all day long. He's never depressed. So he realized this is the perfect person to ask this question to, because here is Reb Zusha, terrible life, nothing good going for him, and he's so happy. So he says, Reb Zusha, tell me, how are you so happy? I don't understand. He said, I asked my Rebbe to explain this question to me, and he said I should go visit you. And he asked the question. He says, how's it possible to accept even the bad stuff with joy? So Rabbi Zusha turned to me and says, I have the same question as you. I don't know why the Maggid of Mezrich sends you to me, because I have everything good in my life. And he got his answer. The Maggid was showing him that it's all about your perception. If you are able to look at your life through a different lens and realize that if you're on a deeper level, when we get more mature, we notice that even those bad things, they're actually essentially good. But we're just not mature enough to see the good in it just yet. A knife can be a great tool, but if you're too young to handle it, it can be a bad thing. But the older you are, the more mature you are, the more amazing things you can do with the knife. Just go ask someone that carves wood. Let's go to the final 2 points. And Yudi is going, Rabbi Dukes is going to have some incredible words to say on this. And that is point D, suffering refines us. We're going a little quicker here, so because we want to hear from Rabbi Yudi. We're going to skip to page 78. So suffering, there's another way of looking at suffering, and that is that sometimes we can look at the bad and say, it's intrinsically good. But sometimes we can look at the bad and say, it itself is the reason why I am going to become stronger tomorrow. Just like salt. Let's look at source 9. Penina, can you read source 9 for us? Bryce, can you please read source 9 for us?
Where do you want to sit?
Bryce?
So too, with regard to suffering, the suffering cleanses a person's transgressions, purifying him for more sublime existence.
Okay, well, you didn't miss the first part, what he said, but what you said is a beautiful point, that just like salt, it looks like it's bad to the meat. The meat is like, go away, salt. But no, when you put the meat on the salt, it draws out all the flavor. So too with our suffering, it purifies the person. It brings out the best in us. Just like we see in this picture over here. What do all these pictures have in common? This guy working out hard, a violin string being plucked extra hard, a military person being put through grueling hours of training. And here we have, of course, the needle. That's a needle being placed in someone's body. What all these pictures have in common, guys? Yossi, what do they all have in common?
Is it like time or precision?
Nope. I guess, yeah, you could say all precision. They all have in common that they all provide some level of pain or exertion. But that pain or exertion brings out the best in the person. The harder this guy is going to run, the better athlete he is going to become. Point E, the final point we're going to make before we turn it over to Rabbi Yudi. When it's better not to know. We now seem like we have a pretty good grasp on why we have pain and suffering. So if that's the case, why do we still not know the deeper secrets for why there's death in the world? Why did the Holocaust happen? Why can't we know all that? It seems like pain and suffering, it could be made so much more manageable if we understood why we have it, right? So take a look at this. Do you guys agree? Do you guys agree with that sentiment or disagree? Agree or disagree? Why do you disagree?
Because without pain and suffering, people wouldn't push forward to achieve their goals.
Ooh, okay. Valid point. Anyone else want to share something? So take a look at these glasses. Imagine if I told you that you could put on your these glasses, and you will be able to understand why everything is happening to your friends. You'll know why they have headaches. You'll know why they're getting sick with COVID. You'll know why they had to flunk school the other day. You'll know everything about them. You know all the reasons for why they are going through such a hard life. Would you put on those glasses, yay or nay? Yay or nay? Bryce says nay. Bryce, why do you say nay?
I don't know if I trust the person who's saying to put on the glasses.
You don't trust the VR. But a very, very good point. Okay.
But if I did trust them, I would put on the glasses.
The problem with this is that sometimes it's better not to know. Because we don't know the answer to pain and suffering, it makes us continue to ask why. There's a beautiful video that I'll show after this, hold on if we have time. Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory beautifully says that perhaps God chose not to reveal the secret of why there's pain and suffering because he wants us to continue to ask why. He wants us to continue. That's why. And the greatest leader that I know, Rabbi Lubavitch, the Lubavitch Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, he was asked this question countless times. And he's the wisest man I know, and yet he did not have the answer. Because none of us should have the answer. We should continue to ask why, because the second we know why this pain and suffering, we will stop to ask why, and that will be terrible. God does not want us to just go along with it. He wants us to complain and ask, why are these things happening to our people? He wants us to demand for a better day when Mashiach will come and there'll be no more pain and no more suffering in this world. And that's what he answers to Job, to Eov, in source 12. We look quickly, and then we will end off and turn over to Rabbi Dukes. Thank you for being patient, everyone. Hashem answers Eov. We started off with a quote from Eov asking God why. And Eov said, and God says to him, Eov, where were you when I laid the earth? Where were you when I created the worlds? Have you understood how to create a world and how to make everything go? If you can understand that, then maybe you can understand this. In short, if you wanted to understand all this, we would need to be God. As long as we're not God, we need to accept it. Not accept it. We need to accept that we will not know, but never accept that it is a satisfactory answer. This pain is never satisfactory. We always have to demand and complain to God. It is not fair that our friends are suffering right now. Okay. With that, we end lesson 4. And now I'd like to spotlight our feature speaker for today, Rabbi Yudi Dukes, that will explain more in depth and first person this incredible lesson of why there's pain and suffering in the world. And when Rabbi Yudi Dukes ends, all of you feel free to donate to a special fund for the to support the Dukes family, as well as countless people, others like him, who have struggled and overcome this incredible with incredible fortitude. So thank you, Rabbi Dukes, for staying on for us. And we are now going to hear from Rabbi Dukes.
So I wasn't on from the beginning. I don't know how many of you know my story.
I didn't tell him yet.
Okay, so basically, about a week and a half after Purim this year, the schools had closed down due to the first outbreak of COVID in New York, and we were quarantined in my home. All the kids had to have different, the schools were starting to try to set up Zoom classes, and one day I just, probably about a week and a half after Purim, started feeling pretty sick. And we had been, doing all the protocols. It's very important to follow them, using Purell, making sure that, we weren't interacting with anyone. We stayed in the house unless we had to go and literally just get the basic needs from the store, wearing gloves, washing our hands, wearing masks if we were going to be outside. And I just started coming down with the symptoms. Very quickly got pretty bad and had to go to the hospital. I was admitted into the hospital March 30th, and I'm still here. About a week after I got into the hospital, I fell into a coma, which lasted about 3.5 months. There's actually a very incredible machine called an ECMO machine. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it, but what it does is it's the final form of life support, where basically when the lungs stop working, so there's no oxygen in the blood, and my lungs had collapsed. And basically what this machine does is they pump the blood, kind of like dialysis, out of the body, and it goes through the machine, which oxygenates the blood, and then they pump the blood back into the body so that the blood can go to the brain and make sure the brain still has oxygen. So they say that the person should be able to survive between 1 and 2 weeks. 2 weeks is considered to be like crazy. on such a machine, and I was on it for 9 weeks. So it's been quite a ride. You know, my lungs collapsed 4 times. I had a stroke. I had several embolisms, if you know what that is, blood clots. You know, very many times where my life was basically almost over while I was in the coma afterwards. So it's been a very, very long journey, 8 months now. And God willing, very, very, very soon, I will be going home. But obviously with lots of experience from this. And, you know, part of, you know, again, this fundamental question is why do we suffer? And, you know, from what I just heard, you know, there's some really good reasons. And I want to go through a couple of experiences that I had, which can, you know, and how I tried to deal with them in order to kind of get through this kind of suffering. So number one is there is a difference between pain and suffering. It is possible to feel pain and still not to suffer. And how do we do that? So the way that we can do that is by using our mind to control what's going on in our body. And this is one of the fundamental Hasidic concepts. Is the Hebrew term for it is moach shalit al halev. The mind can control the heart. So your initial reaction when you feel pain is, ow, it hurts, and you know, I'm going to be distressed about this. But really, there's a little bit of space between the time that the pain hits you before you say, I'm getting distressed. And that's where, if you go into your mind, you can say, no, I am experiencing pain, and I can use my mind to determine how I should react. And this is something I had to work on with, you know, there was a therapist which helped me develop this, but I was actually able to demonstrate how there's, you know, when one of the key things in recovering from COVID and, you know, collapsed lungs is the ability to control the rate of your breathing. Because when you start breathing fast, you can have, you know, you can hyperventilate, and it makes you more agitated. And the funny thing is that like the nurses, when you start breathing fast and your respiratory rate starts going high, what they do is they slow down your breathing, which obviously makes you even more agitated because you're not doing it because you want to breathe fast. And so it's actually very counterproductive. Some of the nurses understood that, and instead of doing that would, you know, very gently try to just calm me down. But this tool that I learned was a very special tool where, you know, I trained myself that the second that I heard the beeping, which indicated that my breathing was going a little too fast, I went straight into my brain. It wasn't an agitation. It was, wait, okay, I can control my body. And I would be able to just control the breathing, breathe in deeply, and breathe out slowly. And within about 20 seconds, I was able to get my respiratory rate from being 40 all the way down to 17, which is basically what everybody on the street breathes. And I was able to demonstrate this on the spot at any given moment, just be able to control the breath. So now, why is this important? Because the truth is that, you know, what we say lahavdil, you know, separating our way of thinking from, you know, other ways of worship. In Buddhism, they work for a lifetime trying to do this, where they separate pain from suffering. And, you know, you may have seen people being able to walk on coals because of it. And that's because they're doing the same concept. But which this is just a natural thing that Hasidic philosophy teaches us, is that our brains can control our bodies. And once you learn how to do this, and it is possible, and I did it, and anybody can do it, then it makes you able to, when you feel pain, not to be distressed by it. So that's number one. Now, the question is, why do we suffer? So that, with this ability, you don't have to suffer just because you're experiencing pain. But let's go to another level. There's a really cool procedure that they did on me, where basically what was happening is, so one of the things that they do when a lung gets collapsed is they insert a chest tube, which goes in between the lung and your rib cage and outside of your body. And that chest tube can inflate the lung and also deflate it. And there's different levels. Like sometimes you need it to do both. If you graduate, like the lung starts getting healthier and it just has to inflate and not deflate. And then when you get even stronger, then they just clamp it and they see how you do without it doing anything. And then they can actually remove the chest tube, once the lung is strong enough. So I had 4 chest tubes. So the problem was we got 3 out, but then it was discovered that there was an air leak in my lungs. There's a hole, and there was no way to know how long it would take to heal. And this was a preventative for them actually being able to take a trach out of my throat. There was a part of being on a ventilator is they make a hole in the throat where they can, pump, air into your lungs that way as well. So, so this was going to prevent that from, being able to take the trach out and get off the ventilator. So the procedure, which is a very clever procedure of how to take care of this, is that they inject through, I still had 1 chest tube, and they basically inject this liquid, which, irritates the lung so much that the lung has developed scar tissue because of the damage that's happening. And they inject this liquid, and what the patient has to do is to basically turn from side to side to make sure the liquid goes all around the lung. And the lung, the outside of the lung develops the scar tissue, and the scar tissue covers over the hole in the lung, and that way there's no air leak anymore. So it sounds like a really cool procedure. What they don't tell you is that the pain of damaging the lung with this liquid is actually off the charts. So, in what I've been through with a lot of things is when you experience any pain from the hospital, they say on a scale of 1 to 10, how painful is it? So this kind of pain was on the scale of 1 to 10, a 15. Literally had to, so we knew that after an hour and a half, the pain was going to go away. And I literally just minute by minute, every 10 minutes I had to turn so that the liquid would go to the other side and then back to the other side. And for an hour and a half, it was a nightmare. Again, pain off the charts. So here, I have a question for you guys. When we describe the stories, Nachum Ishkamzu and Rabbi Akiva, with those 2 stories, what would you say the pain that I was having from this procedure was comparable to? Rabbi Rimler?
Oh, wait. Yeah. You're saying comparable to either Nachum or Rabbi Akiva?
Yes.
Which one are you saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Guys, anybody?
Guys, Nachum was the one who had the sand, and it went from jewels, and the guy took out the jewels and it went into sand. And Rabbi Akiva was the one that all his chicken, his donkey, everything was taken away, And because of that, he was left in the dark. So which one would you compare Rabbi Deuce's lungs to? Nachum with the dirt, or Rabbi Akiva with the stuff taken away from him? Just pick one.
I guess Rabbi Akiva, or what's called?
Very good, Akiva. So basically here, the pain itself wasn't good. But because of the result of the pain, which was the scar tissue, there was a really good thing that was going to come out of it. So yes, I mean, you can't say that the pain itself was good, but you definitely can say, wow, look what's happening because of this pain. We're healing this guy's lung. You know, and again, it's a really cool procedure, you know, conceptually, if you don't have to go through the pain. But so yeah, so that's one level. Now, let's try to get to an even deeper level. And this is something that I tried to do with all the different things that I had to go through, was let's see how the actual experience can be good. So an easy one for me was like this. So don't know how many people here might be familiar with, well, before we get there was one day I was experiencing, again, pain similar to that. Basically, the site of one of the chest tubes was, you know, hurting me, again, off the charts pain. And when I told the nurse, they said, let the doctors, they said, okay, let's see what we can give him. And there's a drug called Dilaudid, which is a pretty powerful opioid drug. Again, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with what opioids are, but they're pretty strong drugs and they're pretty addictive. So they gave me Dilaudid, and the instant that it goes into the IV and the instant that I felt it go in, like really right away, my whole body just felt like, wow, this is amazing. Now that lasted maybe a few minutes and it started wearing off. And, you know, within like an hour or two, the pain was back to a 15. And I said, I need something, I need more. And they gave me another dose. Same thing happens. And then a few hours later, I had a third dose. And then again, the pain came back and I needed something. And they said, we're sorry. At this point, we can't continue giving you such a strong drug. So, you know, I couldn't justify, like I said, why am I getting such an intense pain? And then I realized, again, I don't know if you guys know what's going on in America, but you know, you may have heard that there's people saying that there's something called this opioid epidemic, where there's so many people who are addicted to opioids. And I realized after this, this pain had gone, that I had actually gotten from that experience the ability to sympathize with someone who is an opioid addict, because now I had been through that experience of feeling the high that the drug gave me, and also, feeling the need to have more, to escape my pain and take it again. And there's lots of forms of pain which people try to escape from. Not all of it is physical pain. Sometimes it's emotional pain. And that's why people, go to these kinds of drugs. And now that I had been able to feel that pain, feel the benefit or the relief that the drug had given me, the need to try to have more, I had actually grown from that experience and was now able to relate to someone and help them get through their experience as well. So now that experience gave me not just a reason why the pain would be good for something else, but here the pain had to be experienced itself, and that itself was part of my growth. So when we, any kind of challenge, when we look at it in this way, we can always say, this is happening because now I am a more complete person because of this. And someone sent me a clip of Rabbi Shachat from England saying a beautiful parable, which is something that I really live by. There's this donkey, and the donkey is walking, and it's an old donkey, and it trips and falls into an old dried up well. So the farmer hears the donkey braying at the bottom of the well, and the donkey has been, he's been a good donkey, but now it couldn't really do any work anymore. He said, you know what? Let me kill two birds with one stone. I'll get the villagers. We'll come. We'll finally fill up this dried well, so it won't be a hazard anymore. And we'll put the donkey out of its misery. We'll bury it at the bottom of the well. So donkey's sitting there at the bottom of the well, and it's feeling really sorry for itself. And it's in pain, doesn't know how it's going to get out of this well, and all of a sudden feels this huge shovel full of dirt on its back. And then another one, and another one. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is the end. What am I going to do? There's no way out of this one. And, it's feeling really sorry for itself now, and, just in despair. So then the donkey says, no, I'm not going to be a victim here. And the donkey decides, okay, yes, I'm getting piled up with this dirt on my back, but I'm going to shrug it off. It shrugs off the dirt from its back. And the shovelfuls keep on coming down. And every shovelful, it just shrugs that dirt off. Very, very slowly, the bottom of the well starts getting higher and higher and higher. Every time the dirt comes down, shrugs it off a little bit higher. After a full day of shoveling, the donkey rises up, 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 and finally is able to walk out of the well. And this is such a beautiful parable for life. Every one of us is having dirt piled upon us, and we have a choice. We can say, I'm going to let this dirt bury me. I'm not going to be a victim. I'm going to shrug it off. But what happens when you shrug it off? Not only does the dirt come off your back, it actually lifts you up. It makes you a better person. So anytime you're going through some suffering, you can always remember that whatever is hurting you is actually making you a stronger person. I think one of you mentioned this before with regards to, if you had those glasses, are you going to wear them or not? Because if you do know why, then it's easy. You're not growing from the experience. But if you don't know why, then you can grow. And that brings me to one other story, which is a beautiful story. The Kloisenberger Rebbe, Rabbi Yaakov Halberstadt, went through the Holocaust. His wife and 11 kids were all killed. And after the Holocaust, he emigrated to Israel, where he was known for starting the first hospital in the city of Netanya. This is back in the 1940s, right when the state of Israel was being established. They were fighting for it, but he was already building. And they asked him, they said, don't you have questions about how could God do this to you? He destroyed your family, and yet you're so active and positive. And he said, I have very, very strong questions against God. And I know that if I ask him these questions, he would answer me. But I would much rather be down here with the questions than up there with the answers. And this is exactly what we're talking about. When we're here, God doesn't want us to know the answers. He does want us to ask why. He does want us to have questions. Because what does that show? That shows our strength of character. That even though we have questions, it's not going to stop us from working hard, from getting through our challenges and becoming better people. And so I just want to say, you know, it's not easy. The dirt that's getting shoveled on you is real dirt. It's not, it's hard. And shrugging it off is not easy either, but it is lifting you up. And when you focus and try to find the ways that it's specifically lifting you up, then you become such a stronger person. One last story to highlight this. The first day I went to rehab after being in the ICU, I really gave it all I got. And it was the first time in 6 months that my body was actually doing exercise, moving around, and my lungs were expanding. And, you know, I was doing as much as I could to lift up my legs and things which most of us take for granted, but were very difficult for a body that had been deconditioned for 6 months. So the second day in the morning, I was hit by a pain which I had never, ever felt before in my life. Now, this is after that 15 level pain that I mentioned before. This was like a 20. And the doctors, they had no idea what it is. They started a battery of tests, you know, EKG for the heart. We had to exclude that any problems with the heart, X-ray of the lungs, you know, different blood work, you name it. It's just testing, trying to figure out what the source of the pain was. In the end, they said, you know, we don't know. We just think that it's extreme muscle pain from the fact that your body had never moved before, and now you're moving for the first time. But whatever the case was, I lost it. I was in so much pain, and it lasted for like 40 minutes straight. And I couldn't handle the pain. And I lost it. And I was an extreme wreck afterwards. Just laying in bed, I wasn't experiencing the pain anymore. I was sweating from anxiety that the pain could hit me again. And I just didn't know what to do. I was an emotional wreck, totally anxious. And finally, I called my therapist. We spoke for a little bit, and we tried to find a specific sensitivity that I was getting because of this pain. And he gave me some visualization of how to kind of look at the pain and try to shrink it, and, you know, different exercises like that. And he made me feel a lot better, and I stopped being anxious at the time. The following morning, at the time in the morning, I was hit by the pain, that same wave of pain again. I had a friend with me. He witnessed this whole thing. And I was ready. When the pain hit, instead of losing myself in the pain, I went to my head, like I told you before. And I just stayed calm, did the deep breathing. And I was in such pain, I couldn't talk. I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything, but I was able to breathe. I just sat there focusing on my breathing and just breathed in and out for 45 minutes, 2 bouts of this pain. And it stopped for about 20 minutes and came on again for another 40 minutes. My friend stayed with me the entire time. And I did not even have a peep of this pain, which was the most painful pain I've ever experienced in my life. But I knew I could handle it. And afterwards, the doctor said, "What, on a scale of 1 to 10, what was the level of your pain?" And I said, "It doesn't matter." Because once you can get into your head, the pain doesn't matter. And then I took it to even higher level, where I was actually able to experience joy. Because as we studied before, the highest level of God in this world is the level that goes the lowest, in the darkest place, in the most painful place. And so when the pain was happening, I was actually in my mind, not really in my body, but in my mind, I was able to say, wow, I'm actually happy that I'm experiencing this pain because this is God hugging me. This is God embracing me, showing me his highest levels, because these levels, he can't come out in a revealed way, like we learned. And so we don't have to equate pain with suffering. We can even be joyous at having it. And this is not a superpower. Every one of us has this ability, but we need to exercise it. It's something which we have to get used to, going into our minds instead of reacting with our emotions. And when we do that, pain does not equal suffering. And we can also appreciate the fact that this is really the highest level of God.
Wow. Wow. That was incredible. Thank you so much, Rabbi Dukes, for giving us a real life synopsis of what we just studied. Do you have time for some questions?
Please.
Okay. Does anyone have any of the students from CTeenU have any questions that you'd like, or anyone from the audience, anyone that would like to unmute yourself and ask a question? Go ahead. Go ahead, Akiva.
I hope this isn't like pushing anything too sensitive, but what was the like worst or most doubted moment that you had going through everything you went through?
So I do want to say that there have been days and times, even as recently as last week, where, I mean, just in the past 2 weeks, I experienced 2 blood infections, which led to septic shock, which is, you know, is very easy to, you know, to die from. And luckily, I was in the best place for it to happen, which is the hospital. So I didn't have to go anywhere. And as soon as the symptoms came up, they were able to treat it. But the feeling of, you know, just despair and like, why is God doing this to me? It was a very real feeling. And even though I've been through so much, you know, I definitely felt it. And again, this is back to the concept that we said before, that God does want us to question. And I was questioning, why this, you know, I've been through so much already. Why this now? So where do you go with that? So I'm very lucky in the fact that there's so many people praying for me, and so many people who have the trust in God, who I feel is kind of like crowd surfing. You know, when you crowd surf, you don't have to put any ounce into keeping yourself up. The crowd just lifts you up. And that's kind of how I felt. And what I reminded myself, even when I was questioning, was yes, this is an incredibly difficult situation, but I know that I have so much spiritual energy holding me up that even if I'm doubting, there are other people who are not doubting, and they're holding me up too. And that was one of the ways that helped me get through those moments. I do have to say, it's definitely, you know, those were times when my wife would go and visit the, you know, the resting place of the Rebbe, and also ask for special blessings, or even his room. She got actually special permission last week when it was happening to go and just by herself to be in the room that he used to have private audiences with people. And she took me on the phone so that I could be there too, and just prayed and said, please help me get through this. And some, you know, in a different class that I was talking, one of the teams had such a great question. And the question was, what point do you say, you know, okay, I need God's special energy? And what point do you say, I just need to figure out how to get through this with what I've got? And the answer is, it's really both. Some of it is very obviously from God, and they're obvious, you pray and then, just something happens and all of a sudden it's better. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes, you do that and then it's still hard. But the message then is that you do have the resilience on your own without any special thing from, revealed miracle to be able to get through it, because God doesn't give us a challenge that we can't get through. And I do truly believe that even in those times when I feel like I just, don't get it and I'm upset. Like, why is another thing happening now? 8 months of being in the hospital, it's enough already. But again, obviously I have the energy to do it and to get through it. And I always remind myself as well that everything that I do get through brings hope to someone else who can now look at me and say, he got through it, I can get through it.
Thank you so much. Wow. And who else has a question? Anyone else has a question?
Thank you so much, Rabbi.
My pleasure.
So I have a short question. And thank you so much for your time. It really, I know it's late for you. So which one was it for you? Or which one is it for you? Is it the when you look at the pain now, do you look at it as just a conduit for, it'll get through, or do you now look at pain and say, okay, now this is good, or it just depends?
Honestly, I have to. Before he went through the coma too. We knew that. Yeah, I don't know what is the key, but I do have to say that sometimes it's easier than others. But most of the time, I am able to either reach out to someone to give me the strength to get through it, or to really just, again, remind myself that this really is, some special connection that God is giving me.
Wow. So inspiring. Wow. Thank you so much. This Rabbi Dukes, guys, is a modern day superhero. WhatsApp blows up when there's an update from the hospital, and can't tell you the excitement that it caused when we had the video that I shared with you guys of you finally leaving the hospital to the rehab. So incredible.
I do want to say something, Rabbi Rimler. You said I'm a superhero, but I want to point out that usually when we call someone a hero, it's a way of separating ourselves from them, saying that they're extraordinary, they're different. And I want to emphasize that no, I'm not different. I'm just a person like one of you. And, if by saying I'm a superhero, you're saying that you could be a superhero too, then it's okay. But if what you're saying is you can't do what I did, it's not true. I'm an example. If I did it, you can do it. That's the key. Okay.
You guys got it. Next time you're really mad because your parents didn't make the right dinner for you, you'll know what to think. Puts it in perspective, really does. Wow. There's a beautiful, I don't know if you see in the chat, a beautiful thank you from Shoshana Greenberg. Do you see it in the chat? I could read it out for you.
Just a second. Chat, okay. Oh, sure. Oh my gosh, yes, I definitely remember you, Shoshana. Is she still on?
Yeah, she's here.
Oh, hi. I definitely remember you, and yeah, I don't know if you're up to date with the pictures, but Mandy and Baruch are now 13 and 12. Yeah, it's we have very good memories of you, and you're welcome to come to Cedarhurst. And if you're looking for a babysitting job.
Is that for everyone or just for Shoshana? Well, thank you so much. If anyone wants the link to donate, it's to support the Dukes family, please let me know and I'll send it to you. And thank you again, Rabbi Dukes, for taking your time. It's late by you, so really appreciate it, of lending firsthand perspective of how we could live with suffering and see the good inside it. So thank you so much.
And keep on smiling, because wherever you are, you have the ability to affect the people around you, and all it takes is a smile.
Wow. With that said, why don't we all turn our cameras on and make a big smile so we can get a big group picture, and I'll snap a screenshot of it. Like Rabbi Yudi said, big smiles, everyone. Life is good, big smiles. 1, 2, 3, smile. Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining, and let me know if you want the link to donate, and I'll put it in the chat actually, and have a wonderful night, everyone. And thank you, Rabbi Dukes. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rabbi Dukes.
Sure.
Thank you, Rabbi.
My
Thank you
pleasure.
so much. It was incredible.
My pleasure. Who is that? Oh, Chana. Oh, you're
Yeah.
welcome. You're so welcome. My pleasure. Where is it? Okay.